right, thank you for staying with Daybreak. It's time now for State of the Nation, where we talk about matters, politics, and everything in between there. There's a particular subject that we're going to also touch on this morning on matters femicide and also increased abductions and disappearance and the police operations that we're going to talk about. And Charles Owino is here. He's a former police spokesperson, doesn't speak for the police right now, but he's a former police spokesperson. He's the head also of the National Communications Center. Thank you for making time. Irungu Houghton, Executive Director, Amnesty International Kenya, is with us. Thank you very much for making time. And Professor Marion Mutugi, Commissioner KNCHR, is also with us. Asante sana for making time. They've been carrying out research on missing persons and abductions and generally police conduct in general. But let's touch on first the dailies here. We see a lot in terms of international news, what Trump win means for Kenya. Trump season 2, that's on the Standard, what Trump win means for Kenya on the Daily Nation. And Charles, I'll start with you. In your own view, what does this really mean for Kenya? I mean, were you surprised by the outcome?
You know, Trump is a businessman. Naturally, he has very little background in politics. What he has been, you know, he's never been a senator or even a governor in the US, but a serious businessman. His way of thinking is a bit more on, you can hear his policies, America first. So his concern is how to improve standards in his country. And one of the major things he's known for is that in his pursuit for democracy and human rights, he does so without imposing specified conditions. Like Democrats, you know, they have specified conditions. You remember when Museveni went out against LGBT, America was not happy, and they were concerned about imposing certain conditions to him. He's also against he's also against unnecessary funding. For example, the funding going to UN, funding going to NATO, he has concerns about such. And equally, he prefers free trade to humanitarian support, giving things for free. Even in America itself, you find one of his major problems is dealing with lazy people who don't want to work and want things for free. So there are a lot of implications. For example, I don't know how he's going to handle our support in Haiti in particular, because they had pledged to give us about $300 million US. So far, I think $200 million US has not yet been approved. So I don't know the implication of what it will be, but I want to believe that no matter what it takes, I think this is a UN program, we should still be able to pull through. Yes.
Prof, were you surprised by this outcome? And did America squander the one opportunity to be a leader of the nation for some, especially when it comes to equality? Because they had the chance of electing a female president who's been a vice president.
I was hopeful that they would seize the moment, but I was not surprised that they didn't vote for Kamala. It's unfortunate, but it is true that the fact that she was black and she was a woman were two major issues that were against her. At the same time, that the incumbent was a Democrat, was a Democrat. Yeah, was a Democrat, and she was in that government. She really carried that baggage as well.
Yeah, Mirungu, is this a sign that the glass ceiling is far from being broken?
I mean, I think women are breaking the glass ceilings all over the world, right? So I don't think we would attribute, more than what has happened to what has happened. But, as Amnesty International, we are free of any ideology, free of any political party. We don't take positions, except positions that are informed by human rights principles. I think our reaction to the election has been really just, I guess, first of all, what happened. It seems to us that what happened was the Democratic Party did not essentially speak to the base of American voters. It didn't speak to the working class. It didn't speak to the rural populations. And those are, communities that have basically not felt that the country has been going in the right direction. There's a 20% increase on rent, for example, example, over the last 3 to 4 years, there's a lot of homelessness in America. There is food insecurity. There is a sense of anxiety about inflation rates. And that's what I think the Democratic Party failed to, I guess, comprehend as they mounted their campaigns. And she ran as an incumbent. She didn't run as an alternative to Biden policies. And I think that has probably cost them the domestic base. On the international front, the Democratic Party, didn't take strong positions, for example, on the genocide in Palestine. They didn't take strong positions on other international issues. And I think, this is what has cost them the election, if you ask me. I think the Republicans managed to take over several percentages of voters that had gone with Biden previously. Mm-hmm. What does this mean going forward? I think, I think there are a number of issues. One is that the first period of Trump was not a human rights compliant period, if I can be a bit basic. We saw mass detentions, mass deportations of refugees. We saw constant refrain to what we would call authoritarian styles of government, no respect for the rule of law. He is the first American president, and probably one of the very few presidents across the world that will go into a presidency with a criminal case that has been convicted, not even simply a suspect, but he's essentially a convict. So I think as Kenya, we need to look at Project 2025. This was the manifesto of the Republican Party, and look at what does that mean, not just for, I guess, communities in the United States, but I think for countries like Kenya.
And Charles, are there any lessons we can learn as a country from this election? Because most of the time we try to compare ourselves with the West when it comes to elections. But this time they've elected what Irungu is calling a convicted felon. There's a time we were also attacked, or even thinking of electing some convicted felons. Are there any lessons that we can now draw?
Not much, but you see, this was politics, and definitely, Trump in his own way is a strong man, given his abilities in terms of business and wealth. A lot of highly opinionated people in the US, especially those who are involved in doing huge business, tend to resonate and be close to him. And given the previous things that had happened before, he's campaigned strongly on issue of protecting their borders. And there's a lot of competition. Currently, the whole world, we have a lot of challenges in terms of economy, in terms of employment, and so on and so forth. So you find that he attracted a number of Americans who thought that he would be able to secure their country better. Equally, as much as the economy of US did better during Biden period, but US also still struggled a lot, given the previous situations that had been there before. Yeah. So the lesson we may learn is that equally in our country we are facing a lot of economic challenges, and government will have to work very hard to ensure that the economy is stabilized as fast as possible, so that come next election it does not become an issue. But if we fail to secure the economy of the country, create more employment opportunities, and that is why you will find that the government is so much concerned in undertaking certain actions, especially to revive the economy. In 1986, we had a sessional paper number 1, which gave us a directive. They realized that industrialization was creating very minimum. You invest a lot in industries, as if you invest as a country without partners, you find that you spend a lot of money, and yet you create very few jobs. An example was given during the last campaign of the firearm factory, which was built in Thika, which had costed $4 billion, and would only employ 100 people. That is, it means the cost of one job, creating one job, was $40 billion. They also talked about the factory which was built by Ngelu in Kitui, which costed about 168 million. And then you find that it could only create 600 jobs, meaning creating one job was about 280. So if you look at the sessional paper number 1 of 1986, it was very clear. It said that because of limited resources, we have to push money to agriculture and then to medium, small and micro enterprises, SMEs. And that is why you are finding currently, the current government is trying to push in a lot of money on SMEs and putting in a lot of money on agriculture so that we could create as much employment as possible. So there's a lot of money which has gone to rehabilitation of coffee, cashew nuts, a lot of money which has gone to production of maize and the rest. So what I'm saying is that we have a challenge. The biggest lesson we can learn as a country is that when economy is not doing very well, on the periphery, the economy may appear to be doing well, like the American economy. But now when you go to the individuals, you find that their pockets are highly harassed. So we have to work very hard as government to ensure that we stabilize the economy, create as many jobs as possible, so that by the time we come to the next elections, then the public can be able to vote the government. Otherwise, if that does not happen, then we may have a challenge.
Okay. Prof, is the system of election there much better than ours? Because by the time the polls are opening officially, the early voting, more than 80 million had already voted. Is that something we should think about, or is it our trust deficit so low that if you tried such, then it would be an automatic rigging?
Our trust deficit is there, and even with our voting system that we believe has improved and is one of the most expensive voting systems worldwide, we still have a problem of trust. So I wouldn't add another layer there. But what to me is important, and the lesson that we can learn, is that the electorate is very vindictive, and they are willing to do things that they believe will help them in terms of their own personal well-being and economic well-being in this case. But what was also concerning is the sexual hate speech that Americans seems to tolerate, and particularly against certain groups of women. And that is very concerning from a human rights point of view.
Irungu, are there any things you can add from your perspective?
I think, a couple of things. One is, jobless growth, corruption, mandatory taxes that are unpopular, and the absence of investment in health and education are things that worry Kenyans dramatically. I think that the recent poll is that something close to about 75% of the population feel that the country is going in the wrong direction. This would be a major factor if an election was called today. So I think for all the political parties, they need to be aware of this. I heard this a little bit in the Deputy President's distinction between, and maybe just let me be very clear, because I guess we've had a transition recently. Deputy President Kindiki's statement about, he made a distinction between the public interest and the national interest. And what I heard in that distinction was really a sense that somehow for the government, they're beginning to see I guess, other things that are more important to them than the public interest or the public sentiment. And I think this is a very dangerous thing for a government, but I can understand it in many ways, because I think there is a feeling that they are isolated, that the public is hostile at the moment. But I keep asking them to continue to focus their energies on speaking to the public interest and to what matters to Kenyan people. And I think these issues that I've raised, like in America, have played out with a Trump victory. They would play out in the Kenyan context. Recent statistics suggest that in the last 2 years, generally, the country is 3% poorer than it was 2 or 3 years ago. Tharaka Nithi, which we often say that Tharaka Nithi in an election is a critical constituency, and who knows how this will play out in 2027. But Tharaka Nithi, the poverty levels have gone up by 8%. So I think it's really important that the economy and the rights of Kenyans in the context of these crises that we're experiencing do not leave the, I guess, the focus of those people who have the power to make a difference.
Okay. And let me play the concession speech by Kamala Harris as we also welcome now Harriet Chigai, the president's advisor on women's rights. When she comes in, we'll just get a touch of what her feeling is about the U.S. election, and then we'll get into the topic of the day. This is what Kamala Harris had to say.
Election is not what we wanted, not what we fought for, not what we voted for, but hear me when I say, the light of America's promise will always burn bright. As long as we never give up and as long as we keep fighting. Over the 107 days of this campaign, we have been intentional about building community and building coalitions, bringing people together from every walk of life and background, united by love of country with enthusiasm and joy in our fight for America's future. And we did it with the knowledge that we all have so much more in common than what separates us. But we must accept the results of this election. Earlier today, I spoke with President-elect Trump and congratulated him on his victory. I also told him that we will help him and his team with their transition, and that we will engage in a peaceful transfer of power. In our nation, we owe loyalty not to a president or a party, but to the Constitution of the United States. And loyalty to our conscience and to our God. My allegiance to all three is why I am here to say, while I concede this election, I do not concede the fight that fueled this campaign.
Before I take a break, let me introduce Harriet Chigai, President's Advisor on Women's Rights, and thank you for making time. What do you make of the outcome of the U.S. election?
Thank you, Trevor, for having me this morning. For me, it's interesting. It's interesting that at the time when the world was looking forward to the first female president, it didn't happen. And that tells you the dynamics of any election all over the world. If you look at the policies, values, and principles that both candidates were running, it was like milk and oil. What Kamala Harris believed in and what she was pushing was completely different with what Donald Trump was running for. So election dynamics means that you have to be with the people. You have to know exactly what the people want. The American people were not ready to continue with the kind of the paradigm shift that the Kamala Harris side of election was pushing for. The first thing Donald Trump has said when he came into office is that he's going to deal with LGBTQ, his Christian values, So you have to look at both ends, and I must congratulate both candidates because they were pushing very serious policies. Kamala Harris was on this other side very liberal, issues to do with abortion, the fabric flock in terms of Christianity, and these are issues that we deal with every day. So for me, it tells us that the world is not ready. The world is still not ready for women leadership, and a lot has to be done. And again, as I said, it's election dynamics. It's what the candidates were selling.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have to take a quick break. When we come back now, we talk about our main topic of the day. There's human rights violations and also femicide. This is a concern. KNCHR have been doing a research on that. Professor will give us a status update of what they found out so far. Then we'll discuss what is the way forward and what is the best way of dealing with these incidences that we're seeing now on the state of the nation. See you in a short while.